Welcome to FinOps in Action. I'm your host, Alon Arvatz. Each week, I'll sit down with FinOps experts to explore the toughest challenges between FinOps and engineering. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited for today's episode because we have a very special guest. He actually started his career as a radio DJ in college, but at some point he decided to pivot to tech. And 19 years ago, he joined ZS as their first QA hire. And in 2017, he shifted to FinOps. Today, he's the IT Manager of Cloud FinOps at ZS. Ron Stein, happy to have you with us.
Thank you, Alon. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So Ron, what do you think should be the FinOps practitioner's top priority?
Our number one priority is putting information into the hands of our stakeholders so they can manage their own project and follow their own forecasts. Our AWS environment has grown too big for my team and I to have hands-on activity on all accounts. So we need to put that information into the consumer.
Yeah. And you actually made a very interesting decision, Ron. And you shared with me that you decided to actually go with a Power BI instead of taking off-the-shelf tool. Can you share with me why you decided to do that and what are the advantages of doing a move like that?
I interviewed someone almost 2 years ago, and he mentioned that he had Power BI experience. So I hired him. Power BI. So our company is, like most companies, we're a Microsoft Enterprise agreement. So Power BI comes along with that enterprise agreement. So we don't have to spend extra money. So we don't know if the dashboards right now are going to be valuable. We don't know what form they will be in another year. So we didn't want to buy any product. We wanted to develop it ourselves, keep it nice and simple, and see what is the information that is most helpful to our end users.
That's great. So basically you say it's for free. That's one. And two, it also gives you the flexibility to do the adaptations to the different functions or engineering groups within the organization.
Correct. We can make modest changes to the template, hopefully not to the template, more toward filtering. So we can just reuse the same templates for different projects. We're a consulting company. ZS is a consulting company, and we host many projects for our clients on AWS and Azure.
And Ron, I'm curious, do you build the dashboards in Power BI yourself or within your team? Or do you also encourage the other functions in the organization to build their own FinOps dashboards or modify your dashboards to their own needs?
No, we build it ourselves. We do take help from other teams to get the data flows set up and our databases set up. But the Power BI dashboard, we want to keep control ourselves.
That's very interesting. And the reason I'm so curious about it is because I heard so many times in the past few months about companies actually moving from off-the-shelf reporting tools to Power BI or QuickSight or Looker, depends on the cloud provider they use. So that sounds to me like an actual trend. Is that something that you see from discussions in the community?
You know, that's interesting that you mentioned that, Alon, and it's good feedback that it's happening elsewhere. But a few years ago, any information that we had and can put it in the hands and share with our users of AWS and the cloud was a great win. Now we're finding they want specific information. And the only way to get that is to design it ourselves.
That's very interesting. And Ron, you also shared with me before this recording that you also put a lot of focus on automating a lot of the things that you do manually. Can you share with me your approach and how you do that?
Sure. I am not an engineer. I studied economics in college, but I've been around engineers for over 20 years. So some of their smarts has rubbed off on me. Engineers, as I think you mentioned it yesterday, or in our pre-talk, Elon, that engineers are inherently lazy. They want to automate everything. So that's what we're doing. We're first trying to figure out what we need to do, turn it into a process, and then automate as much as possible. So we don't need to spend time on it. We can focus our energies on more value-added activities.
Can you share a few examples of some of the things that you automate just to give some inspiration to our listeners?
Sure. So our chargeback, cost allocation. When I started doing AWS and FinOps in 2017, we only had like a handful of accounts. I would log into each account, download the data. Now we have 10 times or 30 times the number of accounts we did 8 years ago. So you can't download all that data. So we automate. It goes to the Kerr file, gets all the data. We have one resource tag that we use for cost allocation. So the script gathers all the data. We went through our calculations. We got the process down, and now it's suitable for automating. So we just push a button, and then we get the output of who gets charged what. It's fantastic. It used to take me like 3 or 4 days of mistakes and wondering why things aren't adding up. Now it's done in less than a half an hour.
That's amazing. And these automations, do you build within your own team, or do you need resources from engineering to make it happen?
We are so lucky. We don't do it ourselves, but we are lucky that we are hosted in the Cloud Center of Excellence. And at ZS, we have a very strong and robust and mature CCOE. We have experts in everything. It's getting their time to focus on our activities. That's the hard part. But once they do, it's a dramatic change. It's just night and day.
And how did you convince them to invest in FinOps reporting?
By complaining that cost allocation is taking too long, we're making mistakes, we're prone to error. So we were able to get the help we needed.
Is the fact that you're part of the Cloud Center of Excellence makes it easier for you to have these conversations?
Definitely. We work with them daily. We sit with the Cloud Center of Excellence in the office, and it's very helpful.
Okay, that's great. Generally, I get the sense that when the FinOps person is part of the centralized cloud team or centralized platform engineering teams, so things flows more smoothly because you're closer to the engineers and they can help you build stuff because they can, they're the one that needs some time to take action on some of these things. And so the fact that it's closed makes these things a lot easier.
It certainly does. Engineers want to be helpful. They are curious. They want to create new things. It's just getting their time. But once we proposed what we wanted, they look at it as their own problem to solve and how can they creatively complete the job. So that works to our advantage. And it's just, they're so busy.
Gotcha. And Ron, you mentioned that for many years, like almost 20 years, you've worked alongside the engineers. I really believe that like the place where you come from really influences on who you are. So for example, I come from security and I see a lot of similarities, and I always do the analogies between security and FinOps. And also if you look, for example, about 0.5 product, you'll see that it shares a lot of similarities with security products. I wonder if you see any similarities between your first job at ZS as a QA leader to your job now as a FinOps leader.
Oh, definitely. Being a QA was very helpful. So as a QA, your job is basically to antagonize engineers and tell them they made mistakes. How you do that, over time, you learn to partner with them as opposed to say, oh, what did you do now? So by learning how to interact with engineers, what do they need to be able to solve the problem and make corrections, that carries on into FinOps. Plus, being in QA, you learn how engineers and sprints operate. Now, FinOps, we don't do sprints or anything like that, but we know how engineers operate. My QA training and managing a QA team helped me manage this team, and putting everybody to find their skills and develop everyone.
And Ron, what's the right way to tell engineer that he was wrong?
Hey, did you know your application can do this now?
Gotcha.
And you see a blue screen of death.
Gotcha. And do you get some rejection from engineers when you tell them, hey, you did something wrong?
Sure. You always get, well, it works on my machine. And then at that point, you want to say, can you deploy your machine to production? So production works. But no, it's give and take. And, it's just have to understand that you don't exist without them. That the engineers are the ones that create work. And if they don't create it, you don't have anything to test.
For sure. And I think it's always a challenge how to say it right. But in the end of the day, engineers want to get things right. They want the things they develop, create, the products they produce. They want them to work and work well. Like otherwise, they weren't a good engineer.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. And Ron, again, you shared with me so many interesting things on our prep call. And one of them was more around the anomaly detection and the journey that you went through when it comes to anomaly detection. Can you share with us how you started and how you evolved over time?
Sure. So we started by turning on AWS has anomaly detection. So we started to set that up. We had a couple good wins. We found a couple of good early problems that we were able to shut down and take attention. However, probably over 90% of the alerts that we sent out were expected. So here we are telling a manager who's running a technology project that you spent more than you did last week. Was it expected? The last thing they want is someone looking over their shoulder telling them that they spend too much and knowing that it's expected. So we're moving away from anomaly detection and focusing more on budget alerts, that we can set up budget alerts by our resource tags that we use for billing. So it's individual to a single project. And by that way, we have the end user, the end manager, paying attention to the alerts that are sent out. And they will know if there's a problem or if this is expected, that, yes, I gave you a budget amount that we expect to spend, but I know that this month it's going to be a little higher because of the client request. That way, if with the budget alerts in their hands, if they need additional information or insight, reach out to us and we'll be happy to dig in, get on a call with you and see what's going on.
And I assume it reduced a lot of the load of alerts.
Well, we haven't actually stopped the budget alerts yet because we haven't gotten enough budget alerts set up across our environment. So we're still doing budget alerting, but we do expect that to save a lot of time and cut down on some unnecessary emails.
And you have a budget per project?
Yes. For some of our larger projects. So, we're a consulting company. There are SOWs for each project. It clearly states how much you're going to spend. So that budget information is goes into the budget alert.
Oh, very interesting. So when you engage with a customer, you basically based on that decide how much cost the infrastructure should be, and based on that, like the engineering team need to make sure they don't pass this amount.
Exactly. Engineering teams don't pay attention to that. They look at it as, I need to do another run of our data processing. Little do they know that that's going to cost, that they made some changes, and now it's going to increase their budget, the cost. So the manager will know if that's right.
And do you charge your customers if there were excessive cloud costs?
We don't charge, we allocate their cost back to them. So CCOE and FinOps, our goal is with cost allocation is to end the year at zero. We don't want to make a profit because we're not a profit center, and we don't want to under recover.
And the fact that you basically allocate the costs to the customer, does that create more or less incentive to do a cost optimization?
It's more of an incentive, I think, for them to reach out to us. Hey, what can you do for us? We're bleeding money. We're going over our budget. Help. In many cases, we have to turn the situation over to CCOE. We have solution architects, and they need to dig into that. Right now, FinOps, we don't go into the application layer or the infrastructure setup. We hope to as we advance, but there's so many initiatives that we want to get done. It's what's the most important right now.
And when things are project-based, how does that influence the way you do or manage savings plans?
That becomes a little more complicated because we have many projects or several projects in an account. Prior to 2024, we would only buy reservations and savings plans within a linked account and not have credit sharing turned on. So it would only impact that client. We decided in 2024 to turn on sharing to be a little more adventurous. And it worked. We increased our savings. We turned on a lot more power, but it still becomes an issue. Savings plans aren't the problem. It's more with RDS and Redshift when everything is instance specific or region specific. If there's one project that's using a region or instance family that someone else isn't, we really need to talk to that team and get a year commitment from them. Otherwise, it's going to be wasted.
And basically, you also described some type of evolution and journey that you went through from a commitments perspective. So you started with savings plan per account or per project, and you continue to something that is shared. And surprisingly enough, it worked.
It did. So ZS has its own software platform called Zayden. You can go to zs.com and read all about it. But that software is a data and analytics platform. So it has huge spikes of compute of several $1,000s in an hour. And everybody in FinOps knows spikes are difficult to cover. So that's one of the reasons or impetuses for turning on sharing, that someone might be spiking, a whole bunch of clients might be, or projects might be spiking at the same time. And then now we have a smooth base that we can buy a reservation or a savings plan. So that also has been an advantage for us.
Absolutely. So Ron, we already learned a lot from you, and I also got homework to visit zs.com. I will do that for sure. I would like to learn a lot more about you. So today you live in Evanston, Illinois.
Yes.
So I assume you like cold weather.
I'm used to it. I enjoy visiting India, not only to see my team, but I try to time my visits for January or February. So I miss a few weeks of winter.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. And we already talked about your origin story, the fact that you were a radio DJ in college, the fact that you started at ZS from QA, but you actually also were a photographer along the way.
Yeah. So in college, I had, it was the 70s, the early 80s. I was idealistic. I wanted to be an artist, and I was actually pretty good in photography. So I pursued that here in Chicago. Very good commercial photography. But after a few years, I realized, I'm not a genius. I'm not going to make a great living at this, or so I thought. So I switched. First, I went to the Chicago Board Options Exchange, worked there for a few years. But then I went back to school, learned IT, some programming in the 90s, and then I've been in IT ever since.
Got it. Are you happy about it?
I am. I really enjoy my job. Not only FinOps, and I have to thank the FinOps Foundation for turning this into a real thing. That I'm lucky. I have great sponsorship with my boss, who's a partner at the consulting firm. I have great buy-in from his boss, the CIO of the company. And it's all because there's a framework, a legitimate science, if you will, of FinOps. And because of that, I have a very nice job. I love what I do. And, I can't wait to see where we are in 5 years.
And I have to tell you, it really sounds like it. Sounds like you really like your job.
I do. Thanks.
That's great. And Ron, do you have any recommendation for us on a book or a movie that you read or watched?
So I read one a couple of years ago. I'm not a huge reader, but one that struck me is this Swedish novel. I don't know if it won any prizes, but it was a man called Ove, O-V-E, about a curmudgeon, this cranky old man, and this nice immigrant family moves in next door. And at first he doesn't get along with them, but then he becomes family. And it was turned into a Tom Hanks movie, A Man Called Otto. And I kind of see myself as this cranky old, get off my lawn person. But I guess maybe I'm not.
You don't look like one, I have to tell you. Great. And what do you like to do outside of work?
I'm a big TV person, and I love watching the Food Channel. I love the TV show Chop, Top Chef. Past few years, I've been dieting, so that presents a problem because when I watch these shows, I get inspired to go into the kitchen. I can see my TV from the kitchen. So it's just causing angst, but I haven't given it up yet.
Good for you. If you can hold both sides, that's absolutely amazing and inspiring. Great. Ron, this has been fantastic. If our listeners want to reach out to you and ask questions, what is the best way to do that?
Find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I can share my email. It's ron.stein, STEIN, at zs.com.
Fantastic. Ron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Alan, for asking me to do this. This was awesome.
It was all my pleasure, and it also was our listeners' pleasure. And to all of our audience out there, thank you for joining us again to FinOps in Action. Ron, thanks again. This has been another fascinating, interesting episode of FinOps in Action. See you next time. That wraps up another episode of FinOps in Action. Thank you for joining. For show notes and more, please visit finopsinaction.com. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action.